Hello boys and girls, and welcome to lesson 2-4, page 71, where we're going to look at balloon races, okay? And this is, we're going to be multiplying integers, and we're going to use the example of a balloon race to see how it relates to real world situations. Hot air balloon races grab the attention of people from miles around. During a balloon race, pilots must fly over a target on the ground and drop a marker as close to the target as possible. During a recent race, the winning balloon descended, which means went down, negative number, descended at a rate of about 8 meters per second. So you guys can see when we do 8 meters per second that we're doing a multiplication there, and descended means a negative number, it went down. And that's how you can see how it relates to the real world. Now take a look at this video here. This has to be quite a sight to see in real life. An air balloon race with hundreds of balloons up in the air, and you see some pretty funny ones like this one there of a pig, okay, and there are other shaped ones. The one we just saw in the beginning, was that a minion? Or a cow, okay, and we saw one in the beginning of a carriage, but this has to be quite a sight to see. Anyways, these balloons have to go up and down quite quickly to drop a pointer on a target that they have on the ground. Okay, we're going to look at the key concept and also how to multiply integers. What does it mean to multiply integers? Multiplying is repeated. It's a repeated addition. So, for example, 3 times negative 40 means 3 of negative 40s, and you know that. We can also say it, instead of a repeated addition, we can say it's counting by that multiple. Okay, and this tells us how many times we count by this multiple, which means negative 40 is used as an addend 3 times. Negative 40 plus negative 40 plus negative 40 is negative 120, and you can see how it's drawn out on the number line. Okay, a key concept to remember is that the product, right, what it equals to, the product of two integers with different signs is always negative. Meaning, whenever we multiply a positive times a negative, it's always going to be negative, or negative times a positive is negative. So if one of these two is negative, only one of them, the product will be negative. For the sake of review, remember these rules. When you multiply a positive, let's say you have a positive value times a positive, it's always going to be a positive. If you multiply a negative times a negative, it will also be positive. The only time you will have a negative product is when one of the two is negative. Negative times positive is negative, okay? Or vice versa, positive times negative is still negative. So if one of the two is negative, when you multiply opposites, it's always going to be negative. But if they're both the same, it's positive. You see that? If they're both the same, it's positive. So take a look at the example. Okay, you have a negative times a positive equals negative, and positive times a negative again equals negative. They're opposites. So here we have a positive times a negative. So it's 7 times 8. You know that, right? 7 times 8 is 56, and it's a negative. It's a positive times a negative, so it's going to be negative. It's going to be negative 56. And again, we have 6 times 12, right? A negative times a positive. 6 times 12 is 72, but we have a negative times a positive, and it's, according to the rule, it's going to be negative 72. Okay, for example 2, the key concept is that the product, okay, the product of two integers with the same sign is always positive. So positive times a positive equals a positive, negative times a negative equals a positive. If the two signs are the same, it's always going to be a positive product. Okay? So negative times a negative, positive. And you see that? Negative times a negative again, positive. And you see them here again. And positive times positive, obviously it's positive. It's always been positive. So 5 times 11, okay, it's 65. They're both negative. They both have the same sign, so it's going to be a positive number. And now we have 13 times 4. 4 times 10 is 40. 4 times 3, so it's 52. Okay, 52, and they're both the same sign, so it's going to be positive. That is the key concept. Okay, the same sign is positive. Okay, on to example 3. We have word problems now. Okay, so we're given an example of one, and then let's we complete one. An airplane descends at a rate of 175 feet per minute. Now there you go, 175 feet per minute. There is your multiplication. What is the airplane's change in altitude after 5 minutes? So it descends. Don't forget that's a key word. Descend means to go down. Okay, descent after 5 minutes. Write a multiplication expression, then find and interpret the product. Okay, so the words 5 minutes times descent rate of 175 feet per minute. So 175 feet, it's going down, it's descending, that's why it's a negative 5 in 5 minutes times 5. Now this multiplication sign here, boys and girls, is superfluous because the parentheses tells us that we have to multiply already, so we really don't need it. So we can write it as 5 parentheses negative 175 equals negative 875. Don't forget, positive times a negative equals a negative. And there's your therefore statement. Therefore, or so, the airplane descended 875 feet after 5 minutes, which was the question. What is the airplane's change in altitude after 5 minutes? Well, the change is 175 feet. Let's try number 3. Okay, a scuba diver descends from the surface at a rate of 7 feet per minute. Descends, goes down at 7 feet. Okay, so when I see that, I want to write it like this. It's descending 7 feet. Okay, go my negative 7 per minute. But how many minutes? Okay, let's see how many minutes we have to multiply that by. What was the scuba diver's depth after 15 minutes? There it is. Okay, so 15. Right? We have negative 7 times 15. Write a multiplication expression, then find out what it is. Well, equals negative 105 feet, right? That's our unit. But we need a therefore statement because it is a word problem. So therefore, the diver's depth is 105 feet below the surface after 15 minutes. There we go. That answers the question. For example 4, we're multiplying, more than 2 integers. You see right here we have a negative, then a positive, and then a negative. Okay, you can use both 2 different types of property. You can use the associative property where you work either with, you group the 2 negatives and you know that that's going to give you a positive, okay, or you simply work with these 2 first. You can group them and do section by section first. Or you can do the commutative property where you know that if you were to move this negative 7 to this side and you multiply that first, and then you multiply it with this, you're going to get the same answer. But regardless, boys and girls, what we can do is, it's actually a lot simpler than that. You just figure it out by steps. You know that negative 7 times 9, okay, right here, negative 7 times 9, or 7 times 9 is going to give you 63. But remember the rules. This one's negative and this one's positive, so that means it's going to be a negative answer, so we get negative 63. That's what we get out of those 2 numbers. And now we have the negative 6. We have the same sign, negative and negative. Whenever you have the same sign, the rule states that it's going to be a positive. So when we multiply 63, or negative 63 times negative 6, or 63 times 6, we get 378. Right? Is it positive or negative? Well, you know the rules. The same sign always equals positive. So 378. Okay, on to 4b. You see here that we have negative 3 times negative 4 times negative 5. Negative times a negative is going to be a positive, right? So 3 times 4 is 12. And now times negative 5. So now we have a positive times a negative. When the signs are different, it's going to be a negative. Okay, that's the only time. So now we have 12 times 5 is 60, but it's negative 60. Okay, but the signs are not the same. For example 5 on page 73, we're going to do exactly the same as we've been doing, except now we're going to replace variables. Okay, now we're just simply going to multiply numbers or integers with a variable. But we're not given the value of the variable, so we have to just simply keep the variable there. So really, the way it works, boys and girls, is when you have a number times a variable, you just work with what you can, what you're given. We're given two numbers, and we know how to multiply those two numbers. 3 times 6 is 18, and because one of them is negative, it turns to negative 18, right? But what about the y? Well, we still don't know what the value of the y is, but we know that it's being multiplied into these integers. It's being multiplied, so we just keep it there. 18y, and that's it. That's all you have to do. So let's do this one. We have negative 9 times x times 3 times y. Now remember, the community property states that it doesn't matter what order we put these in, it's going to give you the same amount. You can multiply 3 times 2 gives you 6, or 2 times 3 is still going to give you 6. So all of these 4 are being multiplied to one another. So what we can do is just work with the ones we have. We have a 9 and we have a 3. We know that 9 times 3 is 27, and because one of them is negative, it's going to be negative. So you have negative 27. We don't know what the y is, or the x, but we know they're being multiplied. So we just add in the x and the y, so that when we eventually do know what the value of x is or the value of y is, we can replace it and understand that we have to multiply them with the 27. All right, let's start putting some key answers around here. Okay, put an arrow pointing at this one, at 5b, and let's put a star right next to the 18y. Okay. For example 6, we're going to continue to work with integers and variables, but now they're telling us the value of the variable, okay? As you can see down here, we can actually go take it one step further and replace it. So here for 6a, we have 2rs, okay? And we know that r is 5, so it's 2 times 5, and s is negative 10 times negative 10, okay? I can already tell that my answer is going to be negative because I'm multiplying a positive times a positive, okay? And that's going to give me my positive 10. But now I'm multiplying a positive times a negative, which that means they both have different signs. So it's going to be negative 100. Okay? Let's try B. We have 4ab, and we know that a is negative 8. So it's 4 negative 8 times negative 4. Okay, this will give me a positive and a negative will give me a negative, and then so I'll have a negative here, and the negative will multiply to another negative, which will give me a positive. So 4 times 8 is 32, but it's negative 32 times negative 4, which gives us 128. Negative times a negative equals a positive. Okay, there's another key answer. Okay, you can go ahead and now do the guided practice. Remember, you can always reflect back on the examples to see how to do them, but this is exactly in the same order that we've worked. We had multiplying in integers, okay, with separate signs. Now we have a word problem where you have to write the expression. And then we have multiplying integers with the variable and just simply keeping the variable. Like for this one, it would be 2 times 9 is 18. It's negative 18m. That would be your answer right there, negative 18m. And then we are given the value of the variables right here. So complete this guided practice and then the independent practice. And for the independent practice, I really only want you to do this page 74. Okay, only page 74.